Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have breaking news coming from around the world, as we have been able to hear that the United States Air Force is conducting a significant air operation with multiple dozens of tankers taking off from the United Kingdom and flying on their way into the Middle East under the CENTCOM area of responsibility. This is coming as rumors have circled in between the Israeli and American command circles that future strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran may be inevitable due to Iran's abilities to continue to produce and develop a nuclear weapon. At the same time, the United States of America has also stated that strikes against Venezuela on their mainland is imminent within weeks. Military commanders have been discussing and forming plans to conduct strikes against cartel groups and organizations inside of the country of Venezuela itself, and for this reason, we're now hearing that we are weeks away from the actual armed actions of the United States against the nation of Venezuela. This has been met by the President of Colombia once again openly stating that the U.S. military should rebel against the President of the United States and that the President of the United States should be imprisoned. Similar comments were alleged to have been made in the streets of New York City by the President of Colombia, and that was for the reason why his diplomatic visa had been revoked by the U.S. government. Further than that, we also heard that the Republic of Finland is further providing support and assistance to the nation of Denmark, which is still dealing with ongoing drone threats. The Danish have also put their energy infrastructure at level orange, the second highest level before level red, meaning that there is an imminent attack, at least according to the Danish, on their energy infrastructures within the future. We are also seeing that continuous patrols are being conducted along the Baltics by NATO forces in a attempted stance against the Russian Federation and their continued provocations against NATO, while Poland is preparing for mass casualties, and Russians appear to be putting out more false flags in preparation to try and start attacks against Poland and then try and blame them on Ukraine. We have also heard that the Russians are now surprised that the European Union and NATO as a whole are building drone walls and defenses to try and defend themselves against Russian drone incursions, as the Russians seem to be a little bit perplexed as to why they would think it's the Russians that are doing all of these drone incursions across Europe. In the meantime, North Korean support appears to have massively increased inside of Ukraine, as a Ukrainian armed forces unit today near to the area of the Konstantinivka front was able to confirm that they destroyed 4 Koksan SPGs provided by the North Koreans to the Russian Federation. We have a massive amount of news today, and we're going to be making sure to get y'all through each and every single bit and piece of detail that we have on this news over the course of the past 24 hours. Moving us on directly into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we were able to see that a significant amount of aerial tankers are outbound from the United Kingdom, specifically an airbase near to the area of Glasgow, and are heading into the Middle East in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. Involved in these flights are KC-135s and KC-46 aerial tankers, and we have also been able to hear of the occasional C-17 Globemaster being involved in these flights into the CENTCOM area of responsibility. We also got a greater look at these flights, once again from Flight Radar 24, which we can see right here, which is a significant amount of aerial tankers which are heading into the CENTCOM area of responsibility. Many have been hearing rumors that have circled inside of the Israeli and American command structures that imminent attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran are highly likely, and we have seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran has a decent reason to most likely have more attacks conducted against them by the State of Israel and the United States of America. In prior weeks, we have heard and seen clear and credible evidence that the Islamic Republic of Iran is currently working on refining their nuclear production capabilities and are also still working on the development and implementation of a nuclear weapon. For this reason, the State of Israel has largely already been eyeing up and drawing up plans to conduct a second attack against the State of Iran, or the Islamic Republic of Iran, and it appears that this United States action of these aerial tankers moving into the area is incredibly similar to the sorts of air operations that were conducted leading up into the 12-day war and also Operation Midnight Hammer. We have also seen that in the meantime, the Israelis are continuing to provide their older, obsolete, at least according to the Israelis, Patriot air defense systems to the state of Ukraine. A Ukrainian Antonov 124 actually took off today from Germany and landed inside of the Tel Aviv airport, the Ben Gurion International Airport. This has come only days after Zelensky confirmed that the Israelis have already provided the state of Ukraine with a singular Patriot air defense system, including the target acquisition defense system, or the target acquisition systems, and the launchers as well. It is believed at the moment that the Israelis may be moving their retired Patriot air defense systems to the state of Israel to try and get rid of them. This is actually a little bit different than what we prior heard from the Israelis, where they stated that they were going to take the Patriots into the desert and bury them. It actually does appear that they are now providing Patriot air defense systems to the state of Ukraine instead. The reasons for the change in the decision is unknown at the moment, but still an incredibly good one to see. Still, it does appear that the Israelis and the United States are preparing, even in the midst of Israel giving away air defense systems, for another war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And at this point, we are expecting that this sort of a conflict could break out within the next few weeks or the next few months at this point. Moving on out of that and on towards the area of the Eastern Caribbean, we were able to hear confirmation from the President of the United States that ground attacks are going to be conducted in Venezuela by land, going after the cartels that are inside of the country. This has come after a period of quiet on the situation inside of Venezuela, as some tropical storms and depressions have passed through the area, and also in the meantime, while the United States of America has been trying to figure out what exactly our positioning is inside of regions like Europe and East Asia under the EUCOM and Indo-PACOM areas of responsibility. We are now seeing that the United States is renewing its interest in a continued campaign against the nation of Venezuela, and it does appear that they will now be conducting strikes against the mainland of Venezuela against cartel targets, most likely to continue the diplomatic ploy of forcing the Venezuelans into some form of an armed response against the United States, which would give the United States the diplomatic justification of a full-scale war with Venezuela in the claim that the Venezuelans are conducting in support of arms a defense of illegal cartel and narco-terrorist operations within the area of South and Central America. It doesn't appear that Venezuela is alone on that matter, however, as we were able to see that the President of Colombia has once again made inflammatory statements about the United States of America, and particularly that of the President of the United States. According to the President of Colombia, Petro stated that if the President continues to be an accomplice to a genocide, speaking of the situation inside of the Gaza Strip, as he should have been up to this day, he deserves nothing more than prison, and his army should not obey him. This is incredibly similar to the statements that were alleged to be made by the Colombian President Petro inside of New York City, where the United States of America's government alleged that while in the streets of New York City, he joined a pro-Palestinian protest or rally outside of the United Nations Assembly building, and actually stated, or at least according to the United States government, that the U.S. military should not accept the president's orders and in fact should take up arms against the president and the government of the United States for conducting their actions inside of the state of Israel, or largely inside of Gaza and the West Bank in support of Israel. That's at least allegedly what the United States government said, although there is video picture evidence showing him making those statements very much so inside the streets of New York City. Nevertheless, it does appear that these statements are once again being reverberated and echoed by the Colombian president, who appears to be making an open enemy of the United States foreign policy positions, which largely are unanimous not only in the office of the president but also within the U.S. Congress as well, and is continuing to position himself further in support of the Venezuelans, as additional comments that have been made by the Colombian president are largely stating that the Venezuelans are about as culpable for the drug crises as the nation of Colombia is, and that the United States is conducting an illegal war against Venezuela, which is a similar comment that has been alleged by the Colombian president against the United States of America's actions inside of Central and South America. Still, while this situation continues to heat up inside the region, Venezuela is finding itself an unlikely ally, at least in this instance, we have been able to see other developments happening inside of the regions of Europe that are quite significant, at least in terms of the ongoing tensions that are rising between the Russian Federation and the NATO alliance as a whole. Denmark has raised their threat level for their energy infrastructure to level orange. According to information that we've been able to get today, Denmark has raised the energy sector preparedness level to orange, the second highest, amid growing concerns over threats to critical infrastructure stated by the Climate and Energy Minister Lars Agard. The move follows a fresh risk assessment warning of potential disruptions to supply. These new threat assessments are coming out after multiple drone incursions have been conducted over the nation of Denmark and over multiple nations across the whole of Europe in the past week. Many European leaders are starting to believe, even as Zelensky has stated that he has clear and evident proof of such, that all of these drone incursions are being conducted by the Russian Federation, a hostile actor, and are most likely attempting to try and find the vulnerabilities, at least within NATO defense points, or to disrupt significant amounts of economic activity, or further divert weapons from being supplied to the state of Ukraine, as a large amount of these European countries may start to prioritize their home defense and the building up of their own arsenals, rather than providing the state of Ukraine Ukraine with any weaponry. This hasn't stopped any countries inside of Europe from providing assistance to the Danish, as the Finns will now be deploying forces to Denmark to enhance security during and following the EU summits due to the increasing drone risks. According to Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, this is a new type of threat. This isn't a particularly new threat, at least as far as how long it's been around. This sort of a threat has been around since the Nagorno-Karabakh War of 2020, and especially since the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022. However, this is a brand new threat for a large amount of NATO-aligned nations, as they have never had to deal with a drone-based war. This is pretty much the first experience that a lot of countries inside of Europe have had whatsoever, including the United States, against an adversary that is now well-versed in using any kind of drone equipment in a war. It's a little bit interesting to point this out, because some people are a little bit astounded to know this, but while the state of Ukraine are currently the masters of drone warfare and drone warfare technology, and the Russian Federation, at least relative to Ukraine, is struggling to even catch up, even with the Russians struggling to catch up to Ukraine's drone warfare abilities, Russia is leaps and bounds ahead of the Western world in drone warfare capabilities, and also anti-drone warfare capabilities. We have not seen any European or NATO country, for that matter, even in North America, field a usable system of drones, at least in large, inexpensive amounts, or any sort of an anti-drone defense system. Some countries like Denmark do have radars that are specialized in picking up smaller drone-based targets, but there is no drone-based defense system to go along with those target acquisition systems, or for the greater matter, any way for us to also counter the Russian threat by having drone systems of our own in large and inexpensive numbers. Continuous reports have been coming out from the United States of America that legacy defense contractors are simply not able to keep up with the rapidly evolving war space that's being seen inside of the Ukraine war, with the rapidly evolving situation involving drones and incredibly inexpensive but very efficient drone-based warfare systems. We have also seen that many European defense contractors and many European acquisition programs are just not catching up with the speed or relevancy at which drone warfare has swept the battlefield. Drone warfare can be described in the modern day as the next machine gun or next tank, the next major breakthrough on the battlefield, and it's become quite clear, at least in Ukraine, with 80% of all casualties on both sides being caused by FPV drones or similar sorts of drones. The drones certainly are the future, even replacing artillery, which was once the king of war, at least in terms of causing the largest number of casualties on the battlefield. We are seeing that many European countries have started to catch on to this being the case, and the United States has as well, but unfortunately, due to our older and antiquated defense systems, and largely more so not really defense systems, but our antiquated way of creating weapon procurement and development programs, we're just not seeing the sort of development or speed necessary to be able to counter the Russian threat, or really the threat of drone warfare at all, at least within the next few years from what we're hearing. But still, the West is trying, and hopefully we'll have some sort of significant breakthrough soon. Otherwise, the West could find itself in trouble and find itself having an Achilles heel, much like the Russians are currently having against Ukrainian drone attacks on their country. Once again, I just want to paraphrase this here and say this really quickly. The West is not doomed. The West still has the largest and most powerful military force on the planet. However, we do have an Achilles heel at the moment, and we could find ourselves under drone attacks from the Russians and as susceptible to those attacks hitting their marks as Russia currently is vulnerable to Ukrainian drone attacks hitting their marks inside of Russia. So we generally need to see that we adapt, otherwise we could start to see significant blows and hits to critical infrastructure that we would generally not like to see in the outbreak of a full-blown war like the one that we may be seeing here in the future. And that's not a faraway reality. The Republic of Poland is continuing to prepare their hospitals for war and is now one of the major nations that is preparing for significant casualties to break out in the whole of Europe. According to information that we got today, Poland is preparing hospitals for war and training medical personnel for deployment in crisis situations and under combat conditions. This has come not long after the Republic of France and the Federal Republic of Germany, along with the United Kingdom, have all started to prepare their hospitals for mass casualty events, specifically the outbreak of war. Germany has started to custom tailor its forces, at least recently, and its medical staff to be prepared to conduct medical evacuations en masse, with medical hospital trains being prepared in the event, if there is a war in Europe, they will be able to deal with the mass casualties that may be soon to follow. And this is, of course, once again showing us that we are getting as close as we can to the outbreak of war inside of Europe. Tensions continue to remain high, the Russians continue to conduct escalations against NATO forces, and whether or not we are responding, the Russians are surely going to continue their escalations until we have to respond, meaning that war is largely inevitable if things continue down the current track they're at right now. We have seen that NATO is trying to defend itself to some degree, as NATO fighter jets are currently conducting a low-altitude flyover of Latgale and other areas of eastern Latvia near the border with Belarus and Russia, and we have seen that in the meantime, the Russian Federation is noting that the European Union and NATO as a whole is starting to get a little bit more prepared for drone warfare, or at least the defense against drone warfare in the smaller sense, as the Kremlin did state today that Europe should see dialogue with Russia on security issues instead of building a quote-unquote divisive drone wall. And that was according to TASS, which is generally a state-run newspaper. That is a little bit interesting for the Russians to say. It does appear that they are starting to see some minor developments and steps forward within NATO of trying to defend themselves against the Russian drone incursions, but still, the Russians are trying to at least use a diplomatic ploy to tell them to lay down their arms so that way they can attack them far more efficiently here in the near future. Still, the Russian Federation is trying to gear itself up either to ensure that Europe will not support the state of Ukraine or will go to war with the Russians, as we have been able to hear that another false flag is being prepared currently by the Russian Federation. According to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, they have claimed that Ukraine is planning a staged attack in Poland using sabotage groups posing as Russian and Belarusian special forces to target critical infrastructure and falsely blame Russia. This is another false flag attempt by the Russians. We have seen that multiple have been tried over just the past week, or at least some sort of a plausible development has been worked on to try and make it sound like it is a likelihood for one of these sorts of developments to happen, but once again, this is just completely falsified and wouldn't even be true. The state of Ukraine would never attack the Republic of Poland because it has a lot to gain from the Polish support, and also from the Poland's ability to pretty much be a land corridor into Ukraine for foreign supplies to enter from. The state of Ukraine would never risk conducting a false flag attack on Poland, because if it was found out to be Ukraine, like the Russians are saying, then pretty much the entire Western world will start to cut off support to the state of Ukraine and treat them as a hostile nation. And that wouldn't be beneficial for Ukraine whatsoever. The truth is that the Russian Federation is preparing, like they have been, to conduct some form of attack against Poland, and they are continuing to try and come up with some sort of a plausible story, whether it be that Ukraine repaired fallen Russian drones inside of Ukraine and launched those in attack against Poland, or that Russian Spetsnaz and GRU teams that would be apparently Ukrainians in disguise will be conducting attacks inside of Poland to try and allow the Russians to conduct the attack, but also blame it on Ukraine simultaneously, crippling Poland and also making sure that the Western world starts to view Ukraine as a hostile nation. That will most likely not pan out all too well, even if the Russians attempted it, because many countries inside of Europe fully understand that the diplomatic situation in Europe right now is that Ukraine is amazingly friendly to European countries, even providing assistance to the Poles on how to shoot down incoming Russian drones, or any drones for that matter, and the Russians are openly hostile, threatening to go to war every single day, and literally stating, at least for the past week, that they are in a state of war with NATO, and that they are treating the situation as such, making it fairly clear that if any sort of a situation like that happened, it would 100% be the Russians attacking them and not the Ukrainians in disguise. It even seems that the Russians, while making these statements, are pretty much at the rope's end as far as any sort of military support and supplies go, because inside of the area of the Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka front, we have seen something that is once again showing us that their situation is not that well off. The Ukrainians were targeting and destroying today Koksan SPGs, and these are a fairly interesting sort of an artillery system. You can actually see one right here. The Koksan SPG is specifically a indigenous North Korean design, and while somewhat similar to a Gyansen S SPG, or generally some form of another SPG like the Malka, This is 100% a North Korean system, and these had to be supplied by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, aka North Korea, to the Russian Federation for these to be seen and visible on the front lines. And we have seen that this one unit in Ukraine, near to the Konstantinivka front, destroyed an entire artillery battery's worth of Koksan SPGs, 4 of them within a single several-hour period. This is showing us the Russian Federation is running out of just about everything. They don't even have enough of their own home-built SPGs at this point to be able to operate artillery effectively, and they are now requiring pretty much complete foreign support from the North Koreans to keep any kind of artillery pieces on the front line and firing at all. And that's letting us know that the Russian Federation's war industry abilities are just about absolutely spent. Even if the Russian war industry is one of the few economic sectors that is slightly growing at the moment because of the massive amounts of money that the Russians are funneling in to try and produce war equipment, they still cannot keep up with the losses that the Ukrainians are inflicting, or they just can't find the raw materials or resources throughout Russia to be able to build any of this equipment at any sort of a large pace. And for that reason, the Russians are now running out to the point that we're seeing North Korean artillery systems as a norm in the Russian army in Ukraine. And that's giving us the most clear indicator at this point. Russia is running out of leeway in every single direction to keep this war going for long. Their economy is falling apart. Their military can't even source equipment indigenously, or at least in any sort of a modern scope. And on top of that, the Russian Federation is seeing that their diplomatic ploys against the West are slowly starting to deteriorate, and the drone incursions may bring forward a conflict that Russia might be wanting, but may not be ready for at all whatsoever. It's generally just a disaster that's boiling at this point in Russia, either way that they go, and it looks like they're trying to accelerate that impending disaster as much as they can. But nevertheless, that is all of the major news that we have for today. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching, and if you all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't supported the channel and enjoyed it a great deal, please make sure to support us on Patreon. The link is in the description below. For the cost of a cup of coffee every single month, which is about $5, you too can support the Enforcer channel and help us to keep these sorts of short war videos and live streams coming out on practically an every single day basis. All you have to do is click on that link in the description below and join us as a member on Patreon, only $5 a month. But still, a massive thanks to you all so much once again for watching. We're entirely honored for all of y'all to spend your time here on the Enforcer channel watching this news, and of course, we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the next 24 hours of news from around the world. Or we will see you in the next short war video if you don't watch live streams. But nevertheless, we will see you all in the next one.